folks, thanks for coming this afternoon to the Sorell Planning Authority SPA meeting on the 14th of July 2026. I'd like to advise that an audio-visual recording is being made of this meeting. Also remind everyone present to be respectful and considerate towards others attending the meeting. Language or behaviour that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory or threatening to any person attending the meeting or to those listening to the recording will not be tolerated. There's a list in the agenda of those attending. We have had apologies from Councillor Terenius. Councillor Reynolds will possibly be late. Councillor Campbell, apologies from that.
Through you, Mayor. I received a communication that she's unwell.
And nothing from Councillor Miracasada? No.
Not that I'm aware of, Mayor, but I'm just checking.
Okay. So we're on to the confirmation of the minutes of the 23rd of June 2026. Recommendation that the minutes of the Sorell Planning Authority SPA meeting held on 23rd of June 2026 be confirmed. Can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Nichols, seconder. Councillor Reid. All those in favour of the recommendation? Unanimous, thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest for tonight's meeting? Silence is good. Be a note. Thank you. In considering the following land use planning matters, the Sorell Planning Authority intends to act as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. Item 5 on the agenda, land use planning. 5.1 is item 5, 2025, 224.1, service station 39, Main Road, Sorell. 131. Service station at 139 Main Road, Sorell. Would you like me to repeat it? 139 Main Road, Sorell. As proposal for a service station and a car wash. The recommendation is there before us with many conditions. So can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Shaw and Deputy Mayor Larkins to second. Councillor Shaw, would you like to? No? Deputy Mayor Larkins, would you like to?
Thank you, Mayor. There's quite a bit of condition, and I guess my main concern, if I may ask Shane through you, Mayor, is around the natural environment, the sort of neighbours. And with the requirements ongoing for maintenance and operational controls, how is council going to ensure that the conditions of the that are listed be met in terms of environmental factors and lighting?
Through the Mayor, through a combination of condition endorsement process, so a number of the conditions ask for a little bit extra detail, final construction sort of detail, which is an opportunity to review, and secondly, responding as required. So there's capacity for us to monitor the works clearly once the use is up and running, and to take any action that's necessary. It's gone through quite a long process, a thorough process to get to this point, and including lots of consultation with the proponent around what's feasible, what's appropriate outcome that they can deliver. So there's nothing in here that's surprising or something that they can't deliver upon. But there's still a number of extra details that have been added onto through these conditions.
Right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, through the chair. On page 11, under the general note, It says the development does not infer approval under the Commonwealth Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. It is the responsibility of the applicant to obtain approval from this Environment Australia for any impacts that may occur to the Sorell Lagoon Ramsar site. So my question is, has a comprehensive risk assessment been completed by the applicant, which can guarantee no risk to the internationally recognised Ramsar site?
Through the mayor. So the question of EPBC approval is purely one for the applicant or the proponent to consider. So that system is a self-referral system. So if a proponent knows that they will be impacting a specified value or may be impacting a specified value, they have to refer themselves to the EPBC for an assessment. And really the advice notice is highlighting that that's something that they should take on board and consider. What's been provided with proponent within this application is purely what the planning scheme assesses. So there's a number of EPBC values and issues that are not capable of being addressed through the planning system. So in terms of your question about has there been a comprehensive risk assessment, no, what we have is the information that's required by the planning scheme to pass the planning scheme provisos. You see in the report that Parks and Wildlife Service and other state agencies did raise a number of questions around that, and not all of those questions were capable of being resolved through the planning system. So it's really up to proponents to take their own advice as to what, if anything else, they need to do.
Right. So all the stormwater and all the yucky stuff from the car washes, all of that's going to go through the sewage system. Is that what I'm reading?
It's a combination thereof. But there are a number of devices and elements added onto those systems to ensure that fuel, other waste, all that is treated to an appropriate standard. So that I think the level of control around stormwater and wastewater we can be quite confident of. The other sort of concerns and questions that the Parks had were more difficult to sort of evaluate in the what might be the light impact on bird life, and those issues aren't really clearly answered because what the impact isn't clearly understood either. So and for some bird life, there's really good understanding of what penguins, for instance, in shearwaters. There's great scientific knowledge about what the impacts can be and how to mitigate it. But for most bird species, there's no specific studies that say that light does or doesn't impact their breeding behaviour or other behaviour.
Okay. Just one more. There's no bicycle parking at the site, and I was just thinking, there's a lot of people who do bike tours and things and that travel through. I just thought it was kind of weird that there wasn't any allowance at all for any bike parking.
Yeah, through the mayor. No, I think well, look, in our planning view, we didn't think it was something that required specific bike facilities to be installed. There's certainly well, I guess that was our view. There wasn't a specific requirement to provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair. At I think page 39, there's a phrase, the relatively neutral benefit of a service station. Could you explain what that's referring to and how that's been assessed, please? The reason I ask is I believe the phrase in the planning scheme is somewhat better than neutral. So I'm curious about how something that's neutral satisfies that condition, that criteria.
So the the question or the issue is in terms of the bushfire code, and specifically it's in relation to hazardous uses in a bushfire prone area. So you can have a hazardous use in a bushfire prone area if there's a tolerable risk from bushfire can be achieved and maintained, having regard to a number of different criteria, one of which is whether there is an overriding benefit to the community. And that's there not particularly for this type of use, but that might be where you have a situation where a town, you have a small rural town and you need a health facility and you can't locate it anywhere else because it's a bushfire prone area, and you might put greater emphasis on that in terms of on that particular societal community benefit.
Yeah.
In terms of evaluating the risk level. I think in this case, we're more satisfied that the risk will be tolerable. It's a relatively low level of bushfire risk, given that it's sort of from the foreshore only. So I think that comment really just reflects that we don't really have to think too much about that overriding community benefit, because the actual level of risk, while there is a risk, it's not particularly significant.
Right. So, okay. I think I understand in the sense that that particular aspect of the criteria is not all that relevant in terms of the bushfire
Yeah.
in this instance.
I've got a couple of comments. Thank you for addressing the light pollution so well, using the National Light Pollution Guidelines for Wildlife. I know I've been presenting you with that document, suggesting that you utilise that document, so thank you for doing that. Going forward into the future, will I know we have put recommendations in there around stormwater management, etc. But will the responsibility in the future fall to our environmental health officers to do that water quality testing to make sure that the water quality is not becoming degraded or changing enough to impact the wildlife, birds, fish life, whatever, that's feeding and living in that? How will we monitor going forward beyond the building? Or
Yeah. Look, I guess the short answer is if there are concerns raised, we can step in and take action. Some service stations, there can be fairly obvious signs that things aren't quite working, like a little bit of oil sitting on top of a stormwater pit, that type of thing. So we can do spot checks and those sorts of things to cover off that particular issue and concerns, and certainly step in if need be.
Okay. Just following up Councillor Nichols' question about the bike parking. I tend to agree that as the entry to the town in a really prominent place just at the end of the causeway, there'd potentially be a lot of bicycle traffic in that part, particularly touring bicycle, etc. And I'm surprised it wasn't considered more seriously. I'm just wondering if that might be, what does it actually mean in practice in terms of why couldn't something that seems to be relatively small in terms of bicycle parking, why wasn't that able to be provided and what would be required to do so?
Well, to do so would just involve an alternative motion to add a condition in, just to require bike loops or some other sort of mechanism. I think on balance assessment is just reflects that most people will, the majority of people will drive to the site, obviously. And incidental bike users, maybe able to just make do with what's already on site. But if certainly if council wishes there to be some dedicated infrastructure provided, would be an alternative motion.
Sorry, Councillor Shaw.
That's okay. Just a point of clarification on this through the Mayor to the planning officer. Just in regards to that, is there a council policy in terms of bike or a consideration of biking, and even is it a consideration under the planning scheme that we would enforce that? The reason I'm asking is because if you do that and then they kick back, we don't really want to find ourselves in a dispute over a few bike spots if we don't actually have a backup with the policy or if it's not in line with the planning scheme.
Through the Mayor. So it is one of the performance criteria that's invoked by this application is bicycle parking. So we don't have a policy, but it is in the planning scheme. The criteria is bicycle spaces must be provided to meet the reasonable needs of the use, having regard to the likely number of users of the sites, the opportunities and likely need to travel by bicycle, and the availability and accessibility of existing and or planned parking facilities for bicycles in the surrounding area.
Yeah, that's okay.
So look, it's possible.
So it's just so it's part of your assessment that it didn't need it. So we're taking your recommendation essentially.
It was assessed that bicycle users would be, but only a small, very small.
Thank you.
Further to that, if I may. So there was a mention of a figure of 0.6. Was that, what's that calculation, or what does that figure represent?
Yeah. Just bear with me while I find that. So the planning scheme requirement essentially works that if you have a vehicle fuel sales and service use, and then that requires more than 5 car parking spaces, we then can consider the need for bicycle parking. I guess the complicating factor in terms of what we've been discussing is the requirement is 1 space per 5 employees. In terms of 1 bicycle parking space, 1 bike loop for every 5 employees. So the scheme does couch it in terms of probably more urban environment where staff might choose to do that rather than this environment where it's sort of on a passing sort of loop. So it's a little bit different, which is probably another reason why the recommendation is what it is. I guess there are, so I guess it's a little bit hard to strictly require that, because it is it's an employee requirement.
Thank you.
We would like
like to see a cycling route. I feel we would like to see cycling routes going through might be the first stop into town, but we still have the rest of the town that needs
Visiting as well, so.
It's a gateway to the Forestier and Tasman Peninsula, and you're quite often, like touring, you know, it's kind of a promotable thing on tourist terms. So, you know, I just think it's something that's been overlooked, really.
A question, if I may. The capacity charge, and I'm sorry I didn't know where that was. But what is it, and how's it calculated?
Yeah, that's our headworks, stormwater headworks contribution.
Yep. And in this case, it's 2,000 or something.
Yeah, we have recommended that it sort of be essentially halved, based on that they're principally managing the stormwater from the development within their own site. So they've got some retention devices and treatment devices within their own site. And we have no plans to do anything to the stormwater outlet that sort of sits off in the foreshore reserve there. So they can deal with everything on site, so that there's no need for any sort of headworks to occur.
So, could we look at a map to see where the stormwater actually is? Is there a relevant one? Because in terms of the site and those environmental concerns, the light and the stormwater seem to be, well, there were certainly two of the main ones raised by the experts.
Yeah. So the stormwater network is the green line, and it's a sort of a small triangle at the far left, just above the sort of sandy foreshore.
So at, as we know, at Blue Lagoon, we've put a lot of work and many years now into planning that outfall for the Blue Lagoon situation and we've just come to the end of the major upgrades for the Southern Beaches stormwater. How would that outlet compare now that we have that experience of what the work we've done in Southern Beaches, in terms of the solution for the development is to direct what would otherwise go into stormwater into sewer, is that correct? Some of it. So what will be going into the stormwater outlet, and how effective is that outfall, I suppose, is my question.
Yeah, well, the service station will treat any stormwater within its own site for the connection into that outlet. So there's really sort of negligible, zero impact on what's already going out at that outlet, because they'll treat everything so that won't add any more pollutants to that site. It could even make a bit of an improvement, because you can sort of see how the current network picks up from the landscaping supply business and things like that. So I'd imagine there's a bit of dust and solids entering that network at the moment.
And the large catchment beyond that from the highway and
yeah, it picks up a half of Nash Street essentially. Not all of it, but certainly some of it.
And I noted that one of I think it's in the Parks and Wildlife submissions, the and it's something that we're aware of through the work at Blue Lagoon, is the impact of extra fresh water in salt water and how that will impact. I know it was addressed in the reports, but where did we end up with in terms of stormwater, freshwater impact?
There is a detention tank as part of this, which will retain some of that water, slow release.
The question of volume, has that been addressed in the report?
Yeah, through that tank.
So again, as you said, treating and retaining most of it on site,
Yes.
and then right, okay. And to my earlier part of that question, in terms of, do we know how the existing outfall, we got before this development, the existing outfall, how would it rate if it was considered against the standards that we've applied at Southern Beaches, for example? We don't know.
No, I'd need to take that on notice.
I'm concerned about that for the reasons mentioned earlier around we know how critical that is from our experience at Blue Lagoon, and with any outfall to a nature reserve, which has higher conservation values than a national park, that's really serious. So I'm just wondering, do we have time to lay this on the table while we get some data around that, or some advice?
I think so. There's I guess there's two issues. One there's an existing outfall, and there's a number of properties that go into it, and as far as I'm aware, our asset team haven't done any particular investigations on how well that outfall performs.
Yeah.
But in terms of what this development is doing, the way it's been designed is that it's taking care of its own impact before entering in the network, which is not in the township of Sorell. So we have that headworks charge, and that's not, in any other catchment we generally say, look, we don't want individual sites dealing with quality and quantity issues on their own development, because we'd rather deal with it the council would rather deal with it at the end of the pipe through the upgrades that are partly funded by the headworks contributions. But this is a different type of development, something typical residential development. It's got specific impacts, and there's not a lot of room to. We don't have a study on the catchment and the outfall, but there's obviously not a lot of room to do much there in that foreshore and doing things, because that is part of the reserve. So modifying that outfall, even to make it better in terms of its environmental performance, would not be an easy process to go through with the various approval processes required. So in this case, the development is dealing with its impact itself. So it's not making the situation, certainly making the situation worse than what it already is, and maybe by putting some controls in place versus what isn't there now might actually make a few benefits to water quality.
So to your comment, Councillor Reid, perhaps it's something that it's part of another discussion in another forum, using the skills that we have through the CERMP, that when it comes to those outfall upgrades, we prioritise according to the vulnerability of the region.
Yes.
So that's another.
Applying those learnings more broadly to the stormwater management.
Yes.
And we're becoming proactive rather than waiting to see what happens.
Then this is the planning meeting, so
Yeah.
So, but it's certainly something that we can note for
Yeah.
future.
I've got a thing about the plants, the plantings and the landscaping. Will we be able to stipulate what goes in, bearing in mind the proximity to the Ramsar site?
Certainly, yeah. A landscaping plan to be authorised by council can definitely specify what. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent, thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you. One last question. I'm just looking at the clause 8.1.3b, where it refers to does not cause unreasonable loss of amenity through various things, including noise and activity outside of business hours. What are the business hours? There's specifics around daytime hours or essentially daytime hours for construction. What about the actual operations?
Through the chair. So the planning scheme position is that a use can occur. Sorry, I take that back. So as the use itself is more than 50 metres from the neighbouring houses, there's essentially no controls in the planning scheme around the hours of use.
Okay. And the proposed hours are 24/7?
Yeah.
Have you got a follow-up to that one?
Yes, I have. I'm just thinking ahead in terms of the same thing. It's a bit like the other contaminants, like in the stormwater or whatever. What happens? Are there any remedies if noise becomes a problem? Like, yeah. Or does the fact that this either for residents or for the natural environment where noise again might be a problem, what happens if our best assessment turns out to be wrong and it is a problem?
So through the chair, so the Environmental Management and Pollution Control Act does apply if there is nuisance noise, which it's not a straightforward process to determine if it's a nuisance or not. Things are obviously very subjective. But it can be managed if there are issues that arise. I guess if you feel that given where it is, obviously the causeway traffic runs 24/7 significantly, and so the noise sort of exposure of that traffic versus slow moving traffic around the site, etc., is different. We didn't think there was a particular concern, and technically the planning scheme doesn't consider it because it does have that 50 metres of separation from those houses, so distance does tend to work to some extent. But yeah, if there are particular issues, particular complaints, can be looked at, and that could be a way to look at how they're operating the site. Like, certainly not in this case, but in other cases, it might be a specific way a staff member is doing something that's creating a particular noise at a particular time that can be easily rectified. So yeah, there's certainly ways and means to look at noise after the permit's been issued, because you know, the regulation's set up that way because we can only at this stage sort of envisage how it will operate. There may be specific things of how that operates that is a problem and it can be rectified.
Thank you. And one more question, if I can.
Go on.
Is about pedestrians. Just clarify, please, again on a map, ideally, what the pedestrian access is.
So within the site, there are some footpath areas and crossings notated. There's no dedicated pedestrian access into the site, so that would be shared with Beacon Road. Like it's a very wide kind of crossover.
So in terms of pedestrians, otherwise, it's actually the neighbouring property in terms of access through on the council footpath network, etc. Not to the site itself, but around beside the site. I'm curious about how people navigate from Main Road to further north, and does this development impact that at all?
No, sorry. So no, council does have that footpath, which is, it's not fenced off at the moment, but at the far eastern edge of the property, there is a strip of council land that facilitates access to Spoonbill Loop from Main Road.
So it's not on that. It's not shown on that, obviously.
No. It would perhaps appear as part of this property, but it's a separate bit of council land. It just hasn't been fully fenced off.
Okay. But it's not on this actual development.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
More question, Deb?
Thank you.
That's it. So in which case, can I put this recommendation to the vote for a service station and car wash on 139 Main Road, Sorell, to be approved, subject to the listed conditions? All those in favour of the recommendation? Unanimous, thank you very much. So, over on to page 77. Item 5.2. So, 5.2 is a 15-lot subdivision at 67 Tasman Highway, Sorell. The applicant is PDA Surveyors. Proposal 15-lot subdivision, including subdivision road lot and Tasman Highway road upgrade. Can I have a move of this, please? Commissioner Larkins and seconder. Councillor Nicholas, thank you. Open the floor for questions. Commissioner Larkins, do you want to?
Thank you, Mayor. I support the recommendation.
Councillor Nicholas?
Ditto.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Reid?
Thank you. I have a note here about page 92. I'm just going to remind myself what it is. The hazard management area. The 10-metre wide hazard management area. And that's been a significant consideration for this development to achieve the appropriate rating for some of the lots. I'm just curious, is that something that is unique to this or unusual to this, or is it something that's quite common in other places?
Through the chair. No, it is common when you've got sites at the fringe of a town. So essentially, if this subdivision proceeds ahead of the one that was approved last month at Spa, then there needs to be a buffer area put on the adjoining land, just to control some vegetation in that proximity. So that is often necessary when you've got a subdivision site right at the edge of the town that's exposed to grassland or bushland. So yeah, it is relatively common.
Thank you. Now, because there aren't any provisions in the Sorell planning scheme currently, it's through volunteer work in recent times, it's become apparent that there's a potentially state heritage listed portion of 47 Cole Street, right at the very western end, which is on the edge of this development, which is the railway embankment from the Sorell to Belrive Railway. In that heritage study in 1996, it refers to the embankment being included in Schedule 3 of the Sorell planning scheme and should be nominated for inclusion in the Tasmanian Heritage Register. Now, we don't know why, but neither of those things have happened in the 30 years since. But we do know that the significance of the railway, and particularly 100 years now since it's closed, and with the restoration of the carriage shed, has really focused a lot more attention on the railway. And I'd have to say a lot more appreciation for the value, the heritage value of whatever remaining assets there are. I guess I'm just flagging because I'm curious about how the current plan, just to clarify, there's an access way right at that end, where that might go and how it relates to that embankment contour. And secondly, just flagging a matter for later, which is the process for heritage listing, and following up on that mothball recommendation. So, but pertaining to now, just some clarification on that access point.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps a appropriate map would be helpful.
Yeah, so the road that's proposed into the site crosses over the old railway corridor at a point that sort of follows the existing driveway access to the house. So there's no work proposed between the highway and the proposed road into the site proper. So there's no reason for that existing embankment to be impacted.
Yeah. Okay.
But it would certainly be possible and reasonable, given it's council land, just to add an extra condition in to that effect that that's a no-go. It's an exclusionary area, so do not put an excavator near it.
That would seem responsible at this point, given that we now know things that we were unaware of. So, council has been aware of, but not for many, many years.
Can I ask about adding conditions? If you do that, does it happen now within this meeting? Or
Yes.
does it...
Yeah, just be an alternative motion. Language correct?
Yeah, it's like an amended motion to effectively add an additional condition.
Can we have some advice on what sort of wording would be appropriate for what you just said, to
I think no works are to occur
West of the
west of the road
road.
within 47 Cole Street.
I would like to propose an amendment to that effect, that no works occur west of the driveway. Is it a driveway access?
Road.
On the western, west of that road. So in the plan, that shows the current example. In the plan, it looks like a more substantial road. Is that the case?
Yeah, certainly. So roughly where that current driveway is will become a public road. You can, if your eyes are really good, you can see the hatched driveway, or the driveway sort of in a very lightly coloured. No, sorry, sort of heading towards.
Driveway.
Yeah.
It's existing driveway.
So
That's
there
the
is.
Test Networks access.
So there is a new access slightly to the west,
It's an embankment's there.
but the embankment, it sort of meets the embankment roughly at the same
Yeah,
place.
it's a little bit further across, but not
Yeah.
massively.
So there'd still be the most prominent part of the embankment would still be there.
Yep.
And that would give us time to consider our options going forward. Okay. I'd be happy to propose that simple amendment, that a condition be added to that no works occur to the west of that road on council land.
Are you happy with that wording? I've got it recorded. Okay. So the motion, so would somebody like to second that motion from Councillor Reid? Councillor Nichols is to second it. Do we do all those in favour of that? All those in favour of that amended motion? And that would be looking to the
Yeah, you voted on that amended motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that case, that just becomes.
Yeah.
When we get to the vote.
Yeah.
It becomes part of the motion.
Anything further to raise on this application? No, silence. In which case, can I put this recommendation to the vote, please? This recommendation to be approved with that additional condition applied. So all those in favour of the amended motion? Unanimous, thank you very much. Item 5.3 on page 108. So item 5.3, which is a dwelling at 4 Ochre Court, Dodgers Ferry. Applicant Paul Lakeland, architect. Proposal is a dwelling for outbuilding. Reason for it coming to SPA is there's been more than one representation received. Can I have a mover of this application, please? Deputy Mayor Larkins to second. Councillor Shaw, thank you. Deputy Mayor Larkins, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I, through the Mayor to the Planning Officer, Shane, I note in some of the representations that people raise concerns around the prospect of there being living in the shed temporarily while the house is built. Under the planning scheme, what controls or anything is there around that?
Through the mayor. So to do that, it can be done in a number of different ways, but there is that's certainly part of our assessment. So you do need planning approval to be able to do that in most instances, and that's been part of the assessment of this application. There's also requirements under the Building Act. Either that it's fitted out in accordance with the temporary occupancy permit, or you can we get it potentially approved as a house on an interim basis, and then do a change later on. So there's certainly controls in place to make sure that the standard meets the National Construction Code.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me to live in the shed if you're able whilst you build the house, so that you have somewhere to live. So, thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Reid?
Further to that, thank you. Couple of the representations seem to think that the shed, although a temporary dwelling initially, will actually remain a dwelling or a place of business, or both. How does that sit in the planning scheme?
My understanding is that it would be more of an office for the resident sort of setup, which does not require any planning approvals.
Okay.
Even though planning scheme does allow like a home-based business, so like 40 square metres of floor area. So if you're a financial advisor, you could set up an office at home and have clients in and out for all day long. That doesn't need an approval either on the planning scheme. So there are certainly the scheme enables that small scale office use, but my understanding is more for the residents' own needs than a business as such. But that could change.
And just for argument's sake, the suggestion that there may end up being effectively two residents on the one title, how does that work or not?
The scheme prevents two dwellings. Two dwellings are certainly not possible. A house and a secondary residence is permissible in that zone. So any low density residential parcel can have a house and a secondary residence. So there's nothing problematic in terms of the planning scheme around that happening if that's what this or a future owner wants to do.
Okay. And is the secondary residence that's determined by the size of it?
Yeah, that's the current 60 square metre limitation.
And in this case, that shed would be bigger? I'm not sure.
The shed, well, certainly the shed would be.
Mm-hmm.
That mezzanine level all up is 60 square metres, so it would comply.
Thank you. So it depends on the actual use of the building, of parts of the building.
Yeah, certainly there's many examples of an outbuilding sort of having two parts to it, a secondary residence in one part of it and an outbuilding in the balance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I've got one more through the chair. One of the representatives, I think, talked about shadowing and privacy issues, but I'm not sure. I got the impression that the building hadn't been built yet, but they were anticipating there was going to be a problem. So, is there going to be a problem?
So certainly, well, I mean, any building will cause some shadowing. That's unavoidable. There are shadow diagrams submitted with the application, which assessed as being meeting the tests in the planning scheme that, you know, which the planning scheme always anticipates some overshadowing. It's just what's reasonable, and certainly I think what's going to happen in this case is reasonable in terms of overshadowing. There is a recommended condition about increasing the sill height on one window to reduce some of the privacy impacts that will arise.
Thank you.
One more, if I may. Wastewater. I'm just recalling the fantastic work done on the Southern Beaches stormwater wastewater plan, and the phrase no more, the recommendations from the consultants that was approved, no more big houses on small lots, or words to that effect. This is a fairly large lot in terms of residential and even by low density residential. So could it be characterised as a big house on a small lot, or?
No. So it's because this was a recent subdivision, we have the benefit of it being 1,500 square metre minimum lot size.
Okay.
You know, which is twice the size of a lot of the older parcels in Dodgers Ferry.
So plenty of space for appropriate wastewater management, etc.
Yes.
Thank you.
Got it? Yep. Right then. All those in favour of the recommendation to approve the dwelling at 4 Ochre Court, Dodgers Ferry, subject to the list of conditions. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. On to item 5.4 on page 148. Some good stuff. So Sorell Council is the applicant here. It's a zoning amendment to rezone from utilities to open space, Lot 1, Craigs Hill Road, Boomer Bay. Can I have a Councillor Nichols and Councillor Reid to second? Councillor Nichols, would you like to open?
Just I fully support the proposal. Move in the right direction.
Councillor Reid?
Likewise, a change that's significant because it's working with the community and making much improved use of vacant council-owned land, or not just vacant. Anyway, I'll move on. Yes, I fully support the recommendation.
Any further questions or comments from the floor? No. So all those in favour of this recommendation to rezone, and the amendment will then go to public exhibition for a further 28 days. All those in favour of it? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of tonight's planning meeting at whatever time it is. 5:33.